So I'd done a television film that was actually also written by Matthew for the BBC called Smart Money, which I'd ended up hiring Stanley Myers to do the score for, and
that's when we got to know
and his assistant was Hans Zimmer, and Hans was like doing sound design and stuff, and Hans was like the guy who operated the fair, like he was the guy who had all the great sounds, and he of course had originally started as well with a friend of mine, Trevor Horn, who I'd done the Frankie Goes to Hollywood stuff with, and of course Hans had been in Trevor's first band, the Buggles, and you can actually see a very young Hans in the video for Video Killed the Radio Star. Right. And I was talking to Trevor recently, and I said, where did you find Hans from? Because as far as I know, you're the first person that found Hans. And he said, Hans just came into the studio and he had great sounds. He had the great samples that most people didn't. Now anyone can get those cheap samples from anywhere, but really back then he was like the dude who had the samples.
That's right.
And then Hans went to work for Stanley, and he did all kinds of interesting things, like he did all the sounds on Full Metal Jacket and on The Last Emperor, and a lot of things for other composers. Again, we finished the entire film with Stanley's score, and I was ready to sign off on it. There was no question of it not being done. I liked what Stanley did. And again, when it was a problem that Dan Ireland had, when he showed it to the people at Vestron, they didn't just hate the film, they wanted to come over and punch somebody for it, I think. And there was no more money to do anything, and we were all a bit desperate. So we all went round to Hans's and said, "What can you do to help us, Mr. Zimmer?" And Hans just sat there, and he did a proper 1980s synth score with his samples and his synclavier. There was no money for recording sessions. There are orchestral pieces in the film, but when they are, they're done by Stanley. And he did it, and he did an amazing job, and he at least got Vestron to accept delivery of the film. Yeah. But the thing that's interesting about this music in this film is it's all Hans.
Yes.
When it's Hans, there's no one else.
There's no one else.